The victory over Logi Global didn't bring peace, it brought a vacuum. For 2 years, I sat in the center of a silent empire. I had achieved what my father never could, total market dominance without a single rival left standing. But as the winter of my 55th year settled into the Virginia soil, I realized that I was presiding over a museum, not a company. The old guard was retiring. Pete had hung up his keys. Sarah was spending more time with her grandkids in Scottsdale than she was with the Ledgers. I was the last man standing in a fortress built for a family that no longer existed. Then, the letter arrived from Florida. It wasn't just a request to see the books, it was a challenge. Leo wasn't asking for an inheritance, he was asking for an explanation. I didn't send a car for him. I didn't send a plane. I sent him a bus ticket and the address of a warehouse in South Richmond. If he wanted to know the sterling name, he was going to start where I started, in the mud. The trial by diesel. Leo arrived on a rainy Tuesday. He looked like Silas, tall, lean, with a certain effortless grace, but when he looked at me, I saw the ghost of my father. There was a hardness in his eyes that Silas never possessed. It was the look of a man who had grown up watching his father lose and had decided, very early on, that he was going to win. "You look disappointed, Leo," I said, standing on the loading dock as he stepped off the bus. "Expected a limo?" "I expected a business," he said, looking at the rusted corrugated tin of the warehouse. "This looks like a scrap yard. This is where the money is made, kid. The office is just where we count it. You want to see the books? You start with the inventory." For the next 6 months, I put Leo through a psychological and physical meat grinder. I didn't give him a title. I gave him a uniform with no name on it. I made him work the night shift of the damned, the 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. slot where the heavy freight comes in from the coast. I made him unload crates in the freezing rain. I made him ride shotgun with the angriest drivers in the fleet, men who hated the sterling name almost as much as they relied on it. I watched him from the shadows. I waited for him to quit. I waited for him to call Silas and beg to come home to the sun and the sand. But he didn't. He stayed. He listened. He started carrying a notebook, just like I had. One night, I found him under the chassis of a rig, covered in grease, helping a mechanic named Slim fix a blown gasket. "Why are you doing that, Leo?" I asked. "You're a sterling. You pay people to get dirty. You can't lead people if you don't know what their day feels like," he said, wiping sweat from his forehead with a blackened rag. "That's why Silas lost, isn't it? He thought the company was a spreadsheet. He didn't realize it was a machine made of blood and iron. It was the first time I realized that I hadn't just found an heir. I had found a mirror. The return of the vulture. While Leo was learning the grease, the world outside was shifting. Victor Vane, the liquidator who had nearly dismantled us during the Arthur betrayal, had found a new patron. He was now backed by Aegis Capital, a private equity firm known for asset stripping, buying healthy companies, loading them with debt, and selling the parts for a profit. Vane began a slow, methodical siege. He didn't attack our contracts this time. He attacked our foundations. He started buying up the land adjacent to our ghost routes. He began lobbying the state to rezone the private easements we used. He was trying to turn our secret paths into public roads, which would destroy our only competitive advantage. I called Leo into the office. It was time to move him from the dock to the desk. "Vane is back," I said, throwing the legal filings onto the mahogany. "He's trying to landlock us. If he wins these rezoning hearings, our transit times will triple. We'll be just another slow truck in a fast world." Leo studied the maps. He didn't look panicked, he looked hungry. "He's playing a legal game," Leo said. "But he's forgot the history of these parcels. Look at Section 4B. That's the old Miller farm. You have the easement rights, but who owns the mineral rights?" I blinked. I hadn't looked at mineral rights in 20 years. "The mineral rights are held in a separate trust," I said. "Why?" "Because," Leo said, a dark grin spreading across his face, "if there's a significant geological interest, like an unmapped quartz vein or a potential aquifer, the state can't rezone for public use until a federal survey is completed. That takes years. Vane doesn't have years. His investors want a return in 18 months. I felt a chill of recognition. This was exactly how I had beaten Logi Global. But Leo had found a different lever. He wasn't just my apprentice, he was becoming a master of the dark arts of Virginia property law. Before I tell you how we lured Vane into the final trap, I said, looking toward the camera, take a second to like and subscribe. The ending of a dynasty isn't a funeral, it's an audit. You'll want to see who stays in the black. The psychological war. I decided to use Leo as bait. I leaked a rumor through Miller that Leo and I were fighting. I made sure the word got back to Vane that the disinherited nephew was looking for a way out, that he was tired of the mud and the grease and wanted his father's life back. Vane took the bait. He invited Leo to a private dinner at a club in D.C. I sat in the dark of my office that night, staring at the phone. I knew what Vane would offer. He would offer Leo a consulting fee of $10 million. He would offer him the chance to be the CEO of the new Aegis-backed Sterling, a figurehead who got the glory without the work. When Leo returned at 2 a.m., he didn't go to his apartment. He came straight to the office. He offered me the world, Julian, Leo said, sitting across from me. He looked exhausted, but his eyes were sharp. He told me you were a dinosaur. He said you were holding on to a ghost and that I could be the one to modernize the legacy. And what did you say? I told him I'd think about it. But I also told him that I needed to see his due diligence files on the Miller farm. I told him I wouldn't sign anything unless I knew the land was clear. Did he show you? He did one better. He gave me the login to their private server. He thinks I'm his inside man. He thinks I'm the weak link. Leo pulled a thumb drive from his pocket and set it on the mahogany. Everything is on here, Julian. Every investor. Every shell company. Every illegal kickback they've paid to the zoning board. Victor Vane didn't just open the door, he gave me the keys to the vault. The final board meeting. The end came on a Tuesday. We called an emergency board meeting. Victor Vane was there, representing the 49% of shares he had managed to claw together from retired directors and disgruntled relatives. He walked in with the swagger of a man who had already won. Julian, Vane said, adjusting his cufflinks. It's over. We have the votes to trigger a management change. Leo has agreed to step in as the new managing director. Why don't you make this easy and retire to the mountains? You've earned the rest. I looked at Leo. He was standing by the window, his back to the room. Leo? I asked. Is this true? Leo turned around. He wasn't wearing the grease-stained uniform anymore. He was wearing one of my father's old suits, one I had tailored for him. He looked like the king of a country that didn't exist yet. It's true that we're triggering a change, Victor, Leo said. But not the one you think. Leo stepped to the head of the table and opened his laptop. He projected a document onto the screen. It wasn't a management contract, it was a criminal referral. While you were busy trying to buy my loyalty, Victor, I was busy auditing your investors, Leo said. It turns out, Aegis Capital has been using Sterling Logistics stock to launder offshore funds from the very people Logi Global was trying to hide during the price war. It's a violation of the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. RICO, for short. Vane's face turned a shade of gray I'd never seen on a living human. You're bluffing, Vane whispered. The FBI is in the lobby, Victor, I said, standing up. They aren't here for the logistics. They're here for the laundered money. Leo didn't just find your due diligence files, he found your confession. The room erupted in a flurry of movement. Vane tried to reach for his phone, but Miller was already at the door. Within 10 minutes, the Vulture of Virginia was being led out in handcuffs. The Great Dissolution. In the quiet after the storm, Leo and I sat in the office. The sun was starting to come up over the harbor. You did it, kid, I said. You saved the company. The board will vote you in as CEO by noon. I'm stepping down. The crown is yours. Leo looked at the mahogany desk. He looked at the maps. Then, he did something I didn't expect. He laughed. I don't want it, Julian. I felt a jolt of panic. What do you mean? You just fought a war for this. You're a Sterling. This is your birthright. No, Leo said, standing up and walking toward the door. This was your war. This was your revenge. I just wanted to see if I could win it. And I did. Where are you going? Back to Florida. Silas needs help with the boat shop. And honestly, I like the sun better than the grease. I don't want to spend the next 40 years looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next Victor Vane to walk through that door. You're just going to leave it? After everything we did? I'm not leaving it to die, Leo said, stopping at the door. I'm leaving it to the people who actually move the trucks. You should, too. This company shouldn't belong to a name. It should belong to the drivers. Leo walked out. He didn't look back. He didn't ask for a check. He just walked out of the building and back into his own life. The final act. I spent the next year doing the hardest thing a Sterling has ever done. I gave the power away. I didn't sell the company. I converted it into an ESOP, an employee stock ownership plan. I divided the shares among every person who had been with the company for more than 5 years. The drivers, the mechanics, the dispatchers, they were the new board of directors. I kept the ghost routes in a land trust. They can never be sold. They are a permanent sanctuary for the independent spirit of Virginia logistics. On my last day, I went into my father's study. I took the gold lighter Silas used to click. I took the empty humidor. I took the mahogany desk. I took them all to the church property, the pile of bricks that had saved us from Logie Global. I piled them in the center of the ruins and I lit a match. I watched the history of the Sterling family burn. The arrogance, the betrayal, the cold ambition, it all went up in a column of white smoke. As the sun set over the valley, I felt a lightness I hadn't felt since I was a boy. I wasn't the ghost of Virginia. I wasn't the CEO. I was just a man standing in a field. I drove away in an old truck, not a Mercedes, not a company car. Just an old Ford with a dent in the fender. I drove past the Richmond warehouse one last time. I saw a truck pull out of the gate. It didn't say Sterling Logistics on the side anymore. It said Virginia Heritage, employee owned. The driver saw me and honked. I honked back. Aftermath and final reflection. Was the outcome justified? I spent a lifetime fighting for a throne, only to realize that the throne was a prison. I disinherited myself in the end. I chose the exit over the empire. What would you have done? Would you have stayed and built a dynasty for a nephew who didn't want it? Or would you have had the courage to set the fire yourself? The Sterling name is gone from the buildings. It's gone from the ledgers. But in the backroads of the valley, in the secret passes and the logging trails, the spirit of the ghost routes remains. Some things aren't meant to be owned. They are meant to be shared. Was it worth it?